Hello and welcome to Vision 2020, the show where we put perspective on all matters spiritual, economic, political, name it. We got it right here. And as usual, I'm your host, Mark Bichachi, and with me, as usual, is the ever inquisitive, ever intellectual, Miss Wariara Ngigi, who likes the way I say her name, by the way.
I do love the way that you say my name. I do
No,
love the way
I'm
that
not
you say my name.
Kikuyu, so and Wariara is hard to say.
Wariara is a very expensive name. Don't play about it.
I should not cheapen it.
Don't play about Wariara. Today's conversation is very popular among political circles, especially in the West.
Yes.
Wokeism. Wokeism is very popular in the West,
Yes.
especially now that people are, coming against wokeism.
Yes.
And it's going to be centered today because this is a show that is on Family TV.
Yeah.
We are going to bring it and tie it into the church.
Yes.
Because wokeism has affected the church. There's a huge shift in the way that we do church, for example. My generation compared to, say, your generation.
Yes.
I don't think you're that old, but your generation or the generations that have come before us, there's a huge shift in the way that we do church. And Kenya and Africa might still be stuck in its ways, but the West especially, so that has really shifted. Churches are no longer bright and well lit, they are dim and dark. The preachers and the worship leaders are cool and young and hip with locks and long hair and tattoos all over their body,
Yes.
compared to before when, they'd be in suits and big hats.
Yes.
There's a very, very huge change. The church is trying to, some might say, attract young people and pull the young crowd. It's very, very cool. And of course, the generations that came before are opposed to this per usual. And they're saying that the incorporation of wokeism into the church has watered down the gospel because of cancel culture and political correctness. The way that we preach the gospel today is to appeal to the masses rather than to spread the message of the kingdom. So that if preachers before would say, this is wrong, don't do it, now they might say, well, if that's how you're inclined, or that's how you feel, or that's how you identify, maybe don't do it as long as I'm not trending on Twitter on Monday. So we're going to talk about wokeism. Let's begin by defining wokeism. What is wokeism?
Let's understand where the term woke came from. Because I think it is important to understand what wokeism and woke meant, what it has been turned to mean, and who it was for, who it was against, and what it meant.
Right.
In the 60s, when there was the Black Panther movement and the civil rights movement, and there was the push to remove Jim Crow laws and all of those things in the United States of America, where many of the southern states, most especially, were basically apartheid states. Black people, though free, could not eat in white restaurants. They could not participate in normal life with white people. A black person would seldom, for example, sit across from a white person. The white person was considered superior. And that was not just it. I'll give you an example. There was an experiment done on black people without their knowledge from 1930, I think, to 60 or 72 there, where they were diagnosed with syphilis, were left untreated, just so that doctors could see what happens to the human body when this disease is untreated. And many of them died. This is on record. Then you had the time when the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States, actually introduced crack cocaine, which is a horrible drug, decimates populations, totally destroys people. And they introduced them in black suburbs. And when you saw black people, young people lost on crack, that was an issue. If you go far back into the 1930s, when there was the Great Recession, there was something called red zoning. So there were all these houses that were made available to help middle-class families raise themselves out of poverty. But they created red zones for black people. So the white people got better homes, the black people didn't get homes at all, or if they did, then they got bad homes. And some of them were even removed from places that they had bought because these places were supposed to be white-dominated places. And so the term woke arose in this environment where black people were telling each other, stay woke. This government, stay alert. This government is systematically trying to use you and abuse you.
Right.
So the term woke was predominantly a black person being informed about these things. And there are many other things that are systemically racist against black people. Look at how many people are incarcerated in the United States. More black people are arrested for petty crimes than white people, even though white people do the same number of crimes as black people. In the United States, whenever black people have a thing that they're doing that is sensitizing them, there are people on the white extremist side, white supremacist side, who want to take that thing and turn it into something it's not, so that even the black person will reject it.
Right.
So what has happened in modern times, the term woke has been tied into the whole LGBTQ conversation. It's been tied into the whole gender debate, the whole abortion debate. Now, issues of race are very clear-cut. If I mistreat you because you are a Kikuyu and I am a Luhya, it is very obvious that this is a wrong thing, because the world has matured to a point where we know it is wrong to discriminate against color and race.
Right.
But if we bring in issues of gender, LGBTQ and abortions, then suddenly you're touching on the morality of people. It stops being about black and white. It's about you support babies dying or not. So that's what now, when you hear wokeism, it is no longer about race issues and how black people are treated in the States. It's now more about LGBTQ and abortions and gender roles and gender bathrooms and things like that. Now even the people listening to us have an emotional reaction because it has been taken away from the black identity.
The objective to the subjective.
There you go.
And how has the church incorporated wokeism in the way that it operates so that it infuriates so many people?
There is a big question about, do the laws of the land reflect the morality of the church? I'll repeat that. Should the laws of the land reflect the morality of the church? Let me give you an example. It is immoral, in church speak, for a man or a woman to cheat on their spouse.
Adultery.
But you will not be taken to jail by the state for doing so.
Right.
Right? And the church does not go to parliament and different organs of the state to say adulterous people should be arrested. Correct? Because there are certain moral issues that the church has kept, but the state has not reflected. Okay? Very important. But on the issues of LGBTQ, okay, the church wants the state to reflect what the church believes. That's where the rubber meets the road. The rubber meets the road because it is now a political talking point, as it has been even in Kenya,
Right.
that LGBTQ and gender issues are not moral issues, they're also legal issues. You see? And that is where the politician and the church have become one. So in the United States, if a politician comes and says that he does not believe in gay marriage, does not believe in gender reassignment surgery, then he is a Christian, he is siding with the church. And he is anti-woke. The woke are the ones who are saying, let the LGBTQ community do what they want. We cannot determine for someone how they will live their moral lives. Now, if you ask anyone on the street, should the state legislate whether a husband should cheat on their wife or their wife should cheat on their husband, they will say no. What people do in their bedrooms is up to them. But we need to understand that issues of morality are very emotional issues.
Right.
People are not rational whenever they think about it. In fact, you know how many people have killed their spouse because of finding a text from a lover. The way we respond to LGBTQ matters is very emotional. Now, let me put on my political hat for a minute. When you want people to vote for you, you must make them emotional about something. You must make them angry or happy or scared about something. To make people happy, politically speaking, is very hard.
Right.
It is easier to make them scared. If you look across the world, people are scared about immigrants are coming. The Mexicans are coming. Oh, they're going to take our jobs. Brexit was about the Poles and the Latvians coming into Britain and they will take their jobs. They are so scared of their jobs, they voted them out. Then they didn't have people to drive their trucks and deliver their food. Now the UK is in crisis. The politician is drawn to conversations that are emotional and emotive because it keeps you from talking about roads, corruption, infrastructure, and things that matter. So anytime there's a very poignant, emotional point to be driven, politicians will make it the center. So you steal wokeism from the black people, bring it into an environment where the emotions, when you just say LGBTQ, I can see the faces of the people at home contorting because it's an emotional issue. So then you mix that with the politics of the day. Now the church stands up and says, we must be moral. We are a moral nation. And the politician is saying, yes, we must be moral. So now that is the wokeism and how the church has been brought into a political conversation. Yeah.
I think the premise of this conversation, I saw a clip, and not to dwell on the LGBTQ conversation because that's a whole nother conversation,
Yes.
is the way that it was being preached in the church was almost to allow it or excuse it. And the person that was reacting to this video, which I came across online as Gen Zs, all our research we do online,
yes.
Was that they preached it to sound politically correct. They preached it to avoid being cancelled. They preached it because they were quote unquote woke and to avoid anger from the masses.
Yes.
So they said, it's okay, you can do these things. It's okay, you can commit these sins. right? Regardless of the fact that they are condemned in the Bible. And that's where the watering down of the gospel comes in, and where the previous generations are upset. They're saying, you are preaching the gospel in a way that it's not supposed to be preached. You're preaching it to appease the masses, forgetting that we're doing this for the kingdom.
Now, you see, first I told you that this matter has been politicized. Now, in the United States, what has happened is there are churches now on the left, on the woke side, and there are churches now on the right, on the counter woke side.
The conservative now.
Ultra conservative. Then at the same time, media has done the same thing. CNN is on the left, Fox News is on the right. Now, imagine, I want you to imagine what psychologically is happening. If you listen to Fox News, go to a conservative church, you cannot hear ever in your sphere of information, because even social media, the logarithm of social media, in the States it's so bad that a person on the left will never hear a conversation on the right.
Right.
And the person on the right will never hear a conversation on the left. Now, the question stopped being the morality. The question became, how should we treat these people?
Right.
And it changes how you think about the whole debate. And remember, here we've got to think both in terms of the law and politics and in terms of the church. Some on the left agree that being gay in the canon of scripture is not allowed.
Right.
The same way bestiality is not.
The same way prostitution is not.
Yes. But they argue, how should we treat this person? Should we criminalize what they do, and we've not criminalized the adulterer? That's one argument. But this argument is being held in an echo chamber. They are talking to themselves.
Among the right.
Among the left. Now, on the right, they're having their own conversation. And they're saying, those people over there are allowing abominations. Those people are being bad. Those people are watering down the gospel.
Right.
They're not talking to each other. So what has happened is the emotions that arise are not even about the issues that are really being talked about anymore. The emotions that arise is now about enmity. And you can see it even in Kenya. You can see it every time people will say, those guys have an agenda.
Right.
Those guys want to do this. Those guys want to. So the wokeism conversation has moved from what it is really about, and this show we are not going to discuss what both sides are saying, but the wokeism conversation has now been used as an umbrella term for the division of countries politically, religiously, and ideologically. It is happening across the world. It is a division. Listen, you started the show by saying that young pastors today have tattoos. Right?
Right.
My generation, if you had a tattoo,
You're not getting through the door.
no way. Right?
Right.
When societies begin to have things that psychologically are called moral panics, religious panic, Let me explain it. And I hope the person listening to me has wisdom to understand.
Right. They do. It's a smart audience.
Good stuff. In 1980 something, 86 or 84, someone was murdered in a town in the United States. A rumor began that this killing was a satanic killing. It was a ritualistic killing.
Mm-hmm.
The whole country was ablaze about satanism. It's become too much. Our kids, rock and roll is turning our kids satanic. Then later hip hop was turning our kids satanic. It's the reason they were killing each other and and there was such a panic to the extent that even here in Kenya, we had an inquisition into devil worship. Later it was realized that that person who died was killed just the same way people are killed. But the moral panic causes an entire nation to look at the wrong issues instead of dealing with the right issue so that you can have the right solution. So wokeism is being used in the same way because it is easy to make people divided and passionate about an issue. It makes it very easy for you to do politics. Very easy. If you do Kikuyu versus Luya, easy to do politics. You do Kenyans versus Tanzanians, easy to do politics. You do us versus them, easy to do politics. So wokeism today is a political tool. No one should lie to us that it is a religious issue, because God has no issue establishing morality for himself.
Right.
In fact, the church has been given enough authority by God. We don't need the government to tell people adultery is wrong, do we?
No.
We don't need the government to tell us to not lie. We don't need the government to tell us not to worship other gods. We have the capacity as the church to be ahead of this conversation. The church needs to get to the point where it realizes in matters morality, it is the final authority, it is not the politician.
Right, right. And some might argue the ways in which Jesus moved through the earth when he came was very quote unquote woke. And I use this very loosely.
Yeah, it was a very woke way, yes.
It was a very woke way.
He hung out with prostitutes.
And
he was called a drunk and a glutton, yes.
Right. And yet he managed somehow, and with the help of his disciples, to unite the world so that now the population of Christians is insanely huge.
Yes.
In what ways can the church, while being empathetic and kind and while preaching love for one another, still manage, with all the political differences and the left and the right, to unite the world so that we are not in the streets, murdering each other because they have opposing political ideas or beliefs?
Jesus was a very interesting guy. He said a statement, not once, not twice. He said a statement, go and sin no more. Many of us like to quote that statement, rightly so. But we forget Jesus never said go and sin no more unless he had healed the person and unless he had forgiven the person. Any person who's sinning is sinning because they are broken. You must be the healer before you are the convictor. Jesus, when he healed the guy who was paralyzed, he tells him, go and sin no more lest something worse can happen to you. Meaning that the person needed to be healed before Christ said, because there is something broken in people that causes them to do what they do. There is no one who wakes up and wants to do bad things just because there is something in them that's been broken. Sometimes it's a theology that is wrong. Sometimes it is trauma. Sometimes it's life conditions. Sometimes they were abused when they were kids. You need to heal them first. So the church needs to become, instead of a convictor of sinners,
Right.
it needs to become a center of healing. A center of healing. When it becomes a center of healing, when you're healing people, you're not condoning sin. You're helping them to get out of sin. It says, Galatians says that you who is spiritual must restore the one who's restore. What does it mean to restore? It means that the person who has sins is broken. Your job is to restore, to build up, put them back together. It is not to hate. We must be careful. We must be careful and realize that if Jesus could let a prostitute wash his feet, how much distance should be between you and a prostitute? You are the light of the world. Who needs the darkness? Fellow light? Who needs the light? The darkness or fellow light? The lights that are in this studio, imagine if they were facing each other and saying, let's light each other. No, they're lighting this side where there is no light so that the camera can capture. So there used to be a song we used to sing, and it used to say, light your candle.
Carry your candle.
Yes, run to the darkness. You know.
Yeah, don't sing, Mark.
I can't sing.
Yeah.
I can't sing. I know our viewership will drop 100%. But the reason you light your candle and you don't put it under your mattress is so that it needs it. So the question is, and I keep telling people, instead of telling politicians to police morality, which they can't because they are immoral themselves, the church should ask themselves, how many prostitutes are you helping? How many adulterous people are you helping? How many gay people are you helping?
How many liars are you helping?
How many liars are you helping? When you are on that path, you realize it is not the law that's going to save people. It is a church that cares.
And it's not secluding them,
It's not
or hiding from them,
Nope.
or condemning them,
Not at all.
or casting them away,
No.
or banishing them from the church.
No. The only way is the Jesus way. Heal them, then tell them, go and sin no more. If you not heal them, what are you doing? She is satisfied. When she's satisfied, I know the show has come to an end. It's been a brilliant show. Thank you for watching. This is Vision 2020 with me, Mark Bichachi, and Wariara Ngege. I have tried. See you guys next week, same time, same place on Family TV.